This is live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News, our India's voice to the world. I'm Sakal Bhattan, coming up in the next hour. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi en route to Moscow to attend two-day 22nd India-Russia annual bilateral summit. Prime Minister Modi says visit to Russia and Austria will deepen ties. French polls throw fractured verdict in a shock upset for far-right and Macron's coalition. Left-wing combined comes on top. French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal offers to step down. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, firm on Gaza ceasefire deal, says Israel will keep fighting until war objectives achieved. And northeastern Indian state of Assam continues to grapple with intense flood situation affecting at least 2.5 million people, while over in Maharashtra, orange alert issued after heavy downpour in Mumbai. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Moscow starting Monday will be his first visit to Russia in nearly 5 years. He last visited the country in 2019 for an economic forum in the eastern Russian port city of Vladivostok. And ahead of his visit, Prime Minister Modi has said that he is looking forward to reviewing the bilateral cooperation between India and Russia with his friend Vladimir Putin. The Prime Minister also hailed the privileged and special strategic partnership between the two countries and how it has advanced over the last decade. DD India's Jessica Taneja reports from Moscow.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will pay an official visit to Moscow on the 8th and 9th of July. He will be arriving in Moscow in the afternoon on 8th July. President Putin will host a private dinner for the Prime Minister on the day of arrival.
This visit of Prime Minister to Russia is in the first place resumption of the annual summit between the leaders. Second, there is a very multifaceted relationship between India and Russia. So we expect discussions between the leaders to cover all those aspects, both bilateral issues and dimensions of its relationship, but also the regional and global issues of mutual interest will be discussed.
The next day, Prime Minister's interactions would include an interface with the Indian community in Russia. The Indian community is excited to welcome the Prime Minister in Moscow.
From the Indian diaspora, we would like to take our relation on the next level on cultural, the personal relations and everything.
I'm very much looking forward to meeting Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Of course, we have just seen him on the television. So for the first time, we'll be looking at him live in person. And have a very fruitful conversation with him.
I'm really looking forward to our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi's visit to Russia. He's already been here several times, but this time it should be special again for me and for Indians diaspora.
As part of programming elements, Prime Minister will also lay a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier in Kremlin. Later, Prime Minister will visit the Rosatom Pavilion at the exhibition venue in Moscow. These engagements will be followed by restricted-level talks between the two leaders, which will then be followed by delegation-level talks led by Prime Minister and the Russian President. The Indian Prime Minister last visited Russia in 2019 for an economic forum in the far eastern Russian port city of Vladivostok. He last travelled to Moscow in 2015. During his last visit to India, Russian President Vladimir Putin had said that Moscow works with New Delhi in the technical and military sphere like no other country. He said Prime Minister Narendra Modi is a time-tested friend. This visit is aimed at reinforcing those ties and also looking at diversifying trade ties beyond the defense and energy sector. This is Jessica Taneja with video journalist Shubham in Moscow for DD India.
And DD India's Jessica Taneja joins us live on this broadcast from Moscow. Jessica, Hi, good afternoon. Annual summit between Prime Minister Modi and Russian President is, you would agree, the highest institutional dialogue mechanism, especially in the strategic partnership between both sides. And this particular one coming after 3 years. But we've seen a lot has changed around the world and the relationship has also expanded. You're there, you've been reporting since last 48 hours. What do you think makes this very critical vis-a-vis the timings and the intent shown by both sides?
Right, today seems to be an important day for both the leaders. As you pointed out, they're meeting after 3 years and Prime Minister is coming to Moscow after nearly, this is the first visit, pardon me, to Moscow and a visit to Russia since 2019 when he met Vladimir Putin at Vladivostok. In case, at this point, we know that the two leaders have a packed schedule for today and tomorrow. Where I am, Sakal, is where the Prime Minister will arrive in a few hours from now. He will be greeted and he'll be meeting the Indian diaspora as well. On his arrival, he's being received by the Deputy Prime Minister of Russia at the airport. So a grand welcome for the Prime Minister here. But given the current geopolitical climate and how it's turning around, India and Russia continue to focus on a polycentric world where there is no major hegemon that sort of rules the world order, and multipolarity is defined in the geopolitical complex that we are witnessing right now. And given the fact that it was just yesterday that Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban was here as well to meet with Vladimir Putin. So a lot of diplomatic activity happening here, but the focus is on the Prime Minister's visit. There's heavy security deployment here, and the two leaders have a lot to discuss today and tomorrow.
Yeah, taking it from there, Orban was there yesterday. Today he's in Beijing, and now, this is our Prime Minister's first visit ever since the Russian invasion of Ukraine happened. But then we have seen ties between India and Russia have remained strong, notwithstanding Moscow's invasion, or what they call special military operation in Ukraine. Jessica, now at a time when Ukraine conflict has really split the world, how are both sides going to really navigate the conversation if at all this comes up?
Well, the intricacies that have emerged from the Russian occupation in Ukraine has, of course, shocked the world, both economically and otherwise as well. India has been able to absorb quite a bit of that shock, helping Russia diversify its oil trade, especially when India has been able to import discounted Russian crude, and that has helped Indian economy and also helped balance the oil trade in the world. But the focus, of course, is also on how to view the Ukraine situation at this point. Now, India, as you recall, has called for dialogue and diplomacy. If you would also remember, the last time when Prime Minister met Russian President Vladimir Putin in Samarkand in Uzbekistan, he had pointed out that this is not an era of war. So
right.
India wants to mediate peace, and India wants to continue with its policy of strategic autonomy, having that kind of balance, a relationship between both Ukraine and Russia. You'd recall when Prime Minister Narendra Modi took the office for the third time, he received calls from both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, assuring both that India will be able to help mediate and maintain that balance when it comes to relationship between both Ukraine and Russia. But as with Russia, you'd know that our historic ties are time-tested, and of course something that would continue in the long run as well.
Yes, and the fact that President Putin calls Prime Minister Modi his quote-unquote time-tested friend is just recalled. Now, from there, let's talk about the expectation setting as far as Kremlin is concerned. You've spoken to various think tank representatives there. You've interacted with the diaspora. But on diplomacy front, how does Russia really look at leveraging the summit-level talks? In the sense, what makes this Prime Minister Modi's visit to Moscow significant for them?
Right, and the itinerary so far has been able to tell us that there will be delegation level talks and also a conversation between Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi briefly, where they will touch upon various issues starting from energy trade to defense as well. And you'd recall during the last visit in Vladivostok, there was a discussion on how to enhance the route between Vladivostok and Chennai, not to forget the international north-south transportation corridor where India has recently agreed to develop the Chabahar port, which would then connect to the Moscow port from the Mumbai port towards the Moscow port. So that is an important trade route that India has been able to sort of chart out with the help of the Russians and of course Azerbaijan and with Oman, that includes the Duqm port. That is an important maritime route that India would of course push for and hope for more discussion and more clarity. Apart from that, looking at the current oil trade, Sakal, if you see, India has benefited quite greatly from discounted Russian crude, while the Western nations had capped the import of crude at $60 a barrel. India has been able to buy it for $30 a barrel and been able to diversify and help not only the Indian economy but also help balance the oil trade otherwise, and also making sure that Russia is not isolated or alienated, and hoping for a multipolar world where all nations can work together and there is no one hegemon that dictates the world order and the institutional mechanisms.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Jessica, will come to you later in the day. But as of now, many thanks for joining us live. Jessica Taneja from Moscow. And after his Moscow visit, Prime Minister Modi would be visiting Vienna, where the Indian community is looking forward with a lot of anticipation, lot of enthusiasm. DD India's Gautam Roy has spoken to prominent Indian origin family in Austria about their perspective on how the Indian community is contributing to Austrian economy and society while bringing it closer to India. Take a look.
Indian community in Austria is 31,000 strong, and we have a very prominent family in Austria with us. They're the Malakas, Misha, the daughter, and her father, who initially came many years ago in the 80s. Joseph, let's talk to them. Misha, thanks for speaking to us. Tell us about, in the first place, how's the Indian community looking forward to the fact that an Indian Prime Minister is coming to Austria after such a long time?
So everyone is looking forward to meet Prime Minister Modi ji, and it's after a long time that an Indian Prime Minister is coming to Austria, and he has done a lot for the foreign politics and helped a lot for the economic growth and everything. So everyone is looking forward.
And Joseph, tell us about your business. I believe you're also making a lot of contribution to the Indian economy through this business by supplying all this material that you have, a lot of consumables really, importing how much you said every year from India?
Every year we are a minimum 10 million euros product importing from India. So that is spices, rice, and all these chips and all vegetables was before we are importing. Now we stop vegetable, but all other fish, prawns, everything we are importing from India.
And tell us about, the Indian community must have been waiting for this sort of a visit to take place, a very high level visit. What do they expect India could do for the Indian community here in Austria?
Like, for example, bring more people from India to Europe, like Austria. We need more IT people, we need more staff for warehouse and sales and everything to promote more Indian items to the European communities.
Wonderful. And that has happened. Migration mobility comprehensive agreement has taken place between India and Austria very recently, and I'm sure there will be more progress when Prime Minister Modi meets Austria's Chancellor as well, Karl Nehammer, and that is something that a lot of progress can be expected on in this visit as well. With camera person Rakesh Kumar, this is Gautam Roy in Vienna for DD India.
And still to come on DD India News Hour, coming up next. This is what we have for you. In the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, Russia claims strikes on Ukrainian Patriot systems. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban hold talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing. And Japan-Philippines sign landmark defense agreement on reciprocal troop visit.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and shifting focus to what's happening in France. Now, France, we know, is facing a period of tremendous amount of political instability after the country's left-wing coalition was projected to win a surprise victory in the snap legislative election. But the new Popular Front has won the highest number of seats, but it is likely to fall short of a majority. Now, in the 577-seat assembly, the Left Alliance got 182 seats. Macron's centrist alliance secured 168 seats, while Le Pen's National Rally, which was initially pegged at number 1, won 143 seats. The results were a shock after the far-right National Rally party won the first round of voting last week, but came third in Sunday's runoff vote. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Gabriel Attal has offered his resignation to President Emmanuel Macron after his party failed to win a majority in these elections. Meanwhile, joy and relief swept over supporters as the leftist alliance called New Popular Front has defied all surveys and took the top spot. Thousands of demonstrators have gathered in Paris to protest against the far right. The protesters clashed with the police as well. The election will leave Parliament divided into three big groups now, namely the leftist, the centrist and the far right, with hugely different platforms and no tradition at all of working together. So let's quickly go across live to DD India's Ross Collin, who joins us live from Paris. So Ross, first things first, let's talk about the New Popular Front, which seems to be very popular, looking at the numbers, the way they've defied surveys, taking the pole position and a divided parliament. What happens now?
Well, I mean, it's political paralysis. What happens now? We have no way of knowing the clear view forward because no party has a majority. There are so many things that could happen. We might have a change of Prime Minister. The Prime Minister might be remaining in charge of a caretaker administration. There could be a national unity government. There could be a government of technocrats. There could be a minority left-wing government. There could be a coalition if the centrists and the left-wing come together. There is no clear way forward because the National Rally, who were projected to finish first, they have finished third. Emmanuel Macron's party have clawed back their position to finish second, and this surprise victory for the umbrella coalition, four left-wing parties running as one, running as the New Popular Front, they are in pole position and they are already calling for Emmanuel Macron to appoint a Prime Minister from their group.
Okay, so in a situation of this fractured verdict, so to say, is it going to be a difficult or an uphill task for the Popular Front to get its numbers right, to get its mathematics right, so to say, that they are the ones who will form the next government in France?
Yeah, we've had this calls already by Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who is this firebrand figure who founded the far-left party France Unbowed. He is saying that Emmanuel Macron must either resign or change Prime Minister immediately for somebody from his umbrella alliance. However, that alliance is made up of four parties, one of which is the mainstream centre-left socialists. They have already started to distance themselves from Mr. Mélenchon, perhaps calling for a more moderate left-wing Prime Minister to be named by President Macron. It is tradition that the Prime Minister comes from the biggest party. That's why Gabriel Attal, the President's Prime Minister at the moment, endorsement comes from his party, but now that Macron is in second, you would think traditionally the next Prime Minister would be coming from the left wing, but whether the left wing can coalesce around one figure, they managed to come up with this alliance in time for the lightning campaign of 3 weeks. Can they come up with an agreement on who the Prime Minister could be if it were to come from the left? We do know that there are some things that are set in stone. The new deputies, the new MPs will be arriving here in Paris from across the country, across France's overseas territories as well, today Monday and tomorrow Tuesday, to start to take up their positions, for new MPs to start to learn all about the inner workings of the National Assembly as well before they meet for their first official session in public, which will be the 18th of July. But there's a lot of water to pass under the bridge before then. A lot of confusion because no one party has a majority. It is hard to see the exact way forward, but President Macron says that he will be considering all options and will not be rushed into a decision.
Okay, very interesting situation emerging. I'm not sure if anybody could have even assumed that something like this will pop up in terms of numbers there, the way the numbers are stacked. Lastly, Ross, what is the latest on the protest demonstrations and clashes which we have seen spilling over the streets? These elections have clearly mobilized the civil society.
Yeah, we did see some clashes last night, very late on Sunday night, local time here in Paris. There was a great demonstration in terms of size, a large demonstration in Place de la République, one of the key squares in France, in Paris, when it comes to mass mobilizations. A lot of the left wing were gathering there. There was a feeling that they were going to demonstrate against the results because they feared that the National Rally would win a majority. But in the end, it became a bit of a celebration party because the new Popular Front did so well. And then some of the scenes that we did see spilling over, there were some shops around here, banks being boarded up just in case there was a wider unrest on Sunday night. We did see a pretty violent campaign the week previously in between the first round and the decisive runoff on Sunday, with some 50 candidates and activists suffering aggression, according to the Interior Ministry, including one of Emmanuel Macron's MPs. One of her staffers suffered a broken jaw in one attack. So there were these incidences and a climate of violence leading into the decisive second round, and then we did see some of those clashes, as you say, between police and demonstrators on Sunday evening.
All right, Ross Cullen, thank you very much as of now for joining us live from Paris on French elections and the uncertainty. And staying with news coming in from France, Reuters Paris bureau chief Richard Law on Monday has said that France could be stuck with a long period of policy paralysis in the following months after last night's vote, as the picking of the country's next prime minister also hangs in the balance.
The big question now is, how will a government emerge from last night's vote? The expectation now is that he will wait a few days to see how things shake out. There is the possibility that we could see some forces from the leftist alliance seek to build a coalition with some forces from Macron's own centrist camp. I think what this means is that we're facing a prolonged period of instability, a long period of political uncertainty that could mean policy paralysis in the coming months, perhaps even the next year.
France election produced a hung parliament, as we just told you, with the leftist alliance in the lead, but without an absolute majority. Now, the next report is a detailed one that tells you how the French system really works and what may come next after the results are announced.
For weeks, the prospect of the far-right grabbing power for the first time in France's modern history was all that was discussed. But against all odds, the new Popular Front, a hastily concluded alliance between the four main left-wing parties, the Socialists, Greens, Communists and Jean-Luc Mélenchon's France Unboard movement, came out ahead, while Marine Le Pen's National Party fell to the third place. What comes next remains highly uncertain. The choice of France's future Prime Minister formally belongs to the country's President, Emmanuel Macron, who is not legally bound by the election's results, though political custom dictates that the head of the government be chosen from the rank of the strongest political force or coalition. Due to the dual executive system, the president is elected separately by direct universal suffrage and operates as the head of state. The constitution gives the president the power to appoint the prime minister, who oversees the execution of legislation. The president also appoints the council of ministers or the cabinet, which together with the prime minister is referred to as the government. How does the cohabitation work? Now, as the opposition won majority, Macron to appoint a prime minister belonging to that new majority. In this cohabitation, the government would implement policies that diverge from the president's plan. France's modern republic has experienced 3 cohabitations, the last one under conservative president Jacques Chirac, with socialist prime minister Lionel Jospin from 1997 to 2002. The president is weakened at home during cohabitation, but still holds some powers. Now, what about a hung parliament? While not uncommon in other European countries, modern France has never experienced a parliament with no dominant party. Such a situation requires lawmakers to build consensus across parties to agree on government positions and legislations. What about Macron? The president's term runs until 2027, and he has said he will not step down before its end. With no majority and no possibility to implement his own plans, Macron comes out weakened from the elections. In line with France's constitution, he still holds some powers over the foreign policy, European affairs and defense, and is in charge of negotiating and ratifying international treaties. The president is also the commander-in-chief of the country's armed forces and holds the nuclear codes. There is a possibility the new prime minister would be unable or unwilling to seriously challenge Macron's defense and foreign policy powers and would focus instead of domestic politics. Yet today, both the far right and the leftist coalition's views in these areas differ radically from Macron's approach and would likely be a subject of tension during the political cohabitation. Anita Raj for DD India.
Moving on to news from Israel, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has reiterated that any Gaza ceasefire deal must allow Israel to keep fighting until it achieves its war objectives. Netanyahu has insisted that the goals defined at the start of the conflict, including dismantling Hamas's military and governing capabilities and return of all the hostages, must be met. He added that the deal must also prohibit weapons smuggling to Hamas via the Gaza-Egypt border and should not allow armed terrorists to return to northern Gaza. Meanwhile, a new round of ceasefire talks is slated to resume in Doha and Cairo this week. U.S. Central Intelligence Agency Director William Burns is expected to visit Cairo for Gaza truce talks. Burns is likely to meet with Qatar's Prime Minister and Israeli and Egyptian intelligence chiefs on Wednesday in Doha. Earlier on Sunday, a Hamas official said that the group was ready to discuss a hostage release deal with Israel even without a complete ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. Israel on Monday has claimed to have launched multiple air and artillery strikes on Hezbollah military targets in Lebanon. The strikes came after Hezbollah on Sunday launched a drone attack in the Israeli-controlled Golan Heights. Israel has a key surveillance center there. Hezbollah has called the latest attack on Golan Heights as the largest air operation against Israel. And in the latest updates on Russia-Ukraine conflict, Russia's military has claimed that it has struck 2 Ukrainian Patriot air defense launchers. The Russian Defense Ministry has said that the armed forces have seized control of a settlement in the direction of Donetsk region in eastern Ukraine. Russian troops have repelled the attacks by Ukrainian army and hit targets including several ammunition depots, Ukrainian aerial bombs and a counter-artillery radar, while Ukraine says its forces repelled multiple attacks and the air defense shot down 3 Kh-101 cruise missiles that the 6 Russia launched overnight. The missiles were shot down over the central region of Cherkasy and northern Zhytomyr. And the officers of Russia's Federal Security Service blocked an attempt by Ukraine to organize the hijack of the Russian Tu-22 M3 strategic bomber on Monday. The Federal Security Service says Ukrainian intelligence plans to recruit a Russian military pilot for monetary reward and Italian citizenship, aiming to convince him to fly and land a missile carrier in Ukraine. It added that Russia received information that helped Russian forces to strike the Ozern airfield in northwestern Ukraine during the operation. Meanwhile, Russia practiced the electronic launch of Iskander ballistic missiles as part of the training conducted in its Jewish autonomous region, which also borders with China. Let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. After major civil disturbances and violence in a tourist town in Australia, 3-night curfew has been imposed starting Monday. 4 off-duty police officers were assaulted during the violent incidents in the past 72 hours. Boeing will plead guilty in 2 criminal fraud conspiracy charges regarding a U.S. Justice Department investigation. The charges are related to 2 plane crashes of 2018 and 2019. Company will also pay a criminal fine of $243.6 million. Drawing criticism, Panama has closed its borders with barbed wire fences to curb cross-border migration. The move is a result of the recent agreement with the U.S. to end migrant movement through the Darien jungle. And still to come on DD India News Hour, coming up next. West African bloc ECOWAS says it risks disintegration if junta-led states Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger leave. And India's Supreme Court begins hearing pleas related to the NEET-UG examination.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt. Let's do a quick recap of the top stories before we move on. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi en route to Moscow to attend a 2-day 22nd India-Russia annual bilateral summit. Prime Minister Modi says visit to Russia and Austria will deepen ties. French polls show fractured verdict. It is shocking upset for the far right in Macron's coalition. Left-wing combined comes on the top. French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal offers to step down. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, firm on Gaza ceasefire deal, says Israel will keep fighting until war objectives achieved. Newly appointed Dutch Defence Minister Ruben Brekelmans and Foreign Minister Casper Veldkamp affirmed their support for Ukraine on their first visit to Kyiv. The Dutch ministers met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and other senior officials and said the Netherlands' support for Ukraine is rock solid. Meanwhile, Ruben Brekelmans says that the Netherlands would also soon deliver 3 launchers and 1 radar system, adding he was also in talks with other partners.
We already said that we will deliver 3 launchers and 1 radar system, which are key parts of a Patriot system. Today I could tell that they will be delivered very soon, so I think that is very positive. What we're also going to do is talk to our allies and to partner countries to see if they can deliver more. We want to use all creativity to create international coalitions to deliver parts of Patriot systems and bring them together into one fully capable system.
NATO leaders will hold a 3-day summit in Washington, D.C. beginning on 9 July to mark the 75th anniversary of the Transatlantic Alliance. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is expected to be high on the agenda. The U.S. and NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg alike have said that they do not expect the summit to lead to the inclusion of the Ukraine into the military alliance. U.S. President Joe Biden will be hosting an event on the sidelines of the summit with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and approximately 20 allies and partners who have signed security agreements with Ukraine. Meanwhile, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban held talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing on Monday. China, which has close ties with Russia, has been promoting a 6-point peace plan it issued with Brazil in May, while Orban has kicked off a quote-unquote peace mission following the country's assuming the EU's rotating presidency at the beginning of the month. The Hungarian leader's visit comes after he visited both Kyiv and Kremlin with his Peace Mission 3.0. Orban on Monday said that he would also visit Washington after his China visit. Orban is set to participate in the NATO summit in Washington this week. Philippines and Japan have signed a defense agreement after their foreign and defense ministers held talks in Manila on Monday that will allow their militaries to visit each other's territory. Philippines and Japan have been bolstering ties with neighbors and other countries to counter what they describe as China's growing aggression. Chris Gilbert has more from Tokyo.
Well, when these types of 2+2 talks first kicked off between Japan and the Philippines in 2022, it was a much different situation. The Philippines then was under an administration that was much closer to China, but now under leader Marcos Jr., they're much closer to the US, and that bloc is trying to make the most of the current alignment to push through defense pacts and security deals to counter the assertiveness of China in the South China Sea and the wider region. The 2+2 talks between the defense ministers and foreign ministers of Japan and the Philippines on Monday is expected to produce a security agreement which would effectively allow an RAA, or reciprocal access agreement, that empowers both countries to deploy their militaries, or the defense forces in Japan's case, to each other's territories. And this is useful, experts say, for two reasons. First of all, for quick deployment and assistance in conflict situations and sudden conflict situations, but it's also useful to help preparations and smooth preparations for joint military drills and exercises in each other's territories. Japan has this kind of agreement with a number of countries, including the UK and Australia already. And experts are pointing to the fact that this deal with the Philippines may help pave the road as a stepping stone to other kinds of trilateral or multilateral agreements as a framework potentially between Japan, the Philippines, and Australia, or Japan, the Philippines, and Vietnam. This is incredibly good news for the US, which has been looking to build a mesh, a multilateral framework to effectively build a front to hem in the influence of China from Japan through Guam, the Philippines, South Korea, down into Australia, and even as far as New Zealand. And experts are saying that this agreement on Monday, this 2+2 meeting on Monday, is one further step towards that goal. Chris Gilbert in Tokyo, reporting for DD India.
Senegal's President Bassirou Faye has been appointed as a special envoy to hold talks with the military leaders of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger following their move to leave the regional bloc ECOWAS. He was given the special assignment by the re-elected chairperson of the bloc, that's Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu, during an ECOWAS summit in Abuja. The meeting was convened to discuss challenges facing the bloc in the region, including the move by Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger to break away from ECOWAS. Ajek Mangot reports from Abuja.
Nigeria's president and re-elected chairman of ECOWAS, Bola Tinubu, directed Senegal's president to work with the leaders of Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger as the bloc continues its efforts to keep them within ECOWAS. The three countries had announced plans to leave the bloc at the beginning of the year, and in a summit just a day before the July 7th ECOWAS summit, signed agreements for increased defense and economic cooperation under the Alliance for the Sahel States Mutual Pact. These agreements will see them pooling resources to strengthen ties in the mining, agriculture and energy sectors. further dashing hopes of their return to ECOWAS despite the bloc's negotiation efforts. Analysts say the move could have significant security and economic implications, affecting the free movement of people and goods between the three countries and other ECOWAS nations, as well as the Islamist insurgency in the Sahel that's killed thousands and left millions in need of humanitarian assistance. At the summit in Abuja, ECOWAS leaders also discussed security and economic challenges facing the region. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu, who hosted the West African leaders, stated that strong political will and significant financial resources will be needed as ECOWAS looks to operationalize its standby force to combat terrorism and restore stability in the region. The bloc is seeking over $2 billion to fund these operations. Leaders at the summit emphasized that a peaceful and secure West Africa is key to achieving its potential. Ajek Mangut reporting for DD India.
The U.S. military has withdrawn its personnel from Najeer's airbase, meanwhile 101 near the airport in the capital Niamey. The withdrawal on Sunday comes ahead of the U.S. military's exit from a $100 million drone base near Agadez in central Niger in the coming weeks. Niger's ruling junta in April had ordered the U.S. to withdraw nearly 1,000 of its military personnel from the country following a coup last year in the West African nation. Niger's junta has given the U.S. until September 15th to fully withdraw from its territory. In some other news, India's top court has begun the hearing of a bunch of pleas alleging paper leak and other irregularities in the National Eligibility cum Entrance Test undergraduate examination held on 5th of May. The Indian government and the National Testing Agency, which conducts the examination, have told the court that scrapping the test would be counterproductive and jeopardize hundreds and hundreds of candidates in the absence of any proof of breach of confidentiality. India's Education Ministry and the National Testing Agency have filed separate affidavits in the court opposing the plea that have sought the scrapping of the examination and a court-monitored probe into the matter. Some weather-related updates now. First up, Mumbai and Maharashtra, where India's Meteorological Department has forecast heavy to very heavy rainfall in Mumbai today, along with a high tide of 4.40 meters in the sea. Since last night, Mumbai has received over 300 millimeters of rain, causing widespread waterlogging. National Disaster Response Force has been deployed across the several districts, including Mumbai, to prevent any emergencies. To minimize disruption, schools and colleges have been closed for the first session. Mumbai University has also postponed all exams of the Centre of Distance and Open Learning scheduled on Monday. Heavy rainfall has disrupted local train services, resulting in delays and temporary stoppages on suburban and harbour lines. Mumbai Airport also diverted 27 flights on Monday due to heavy rains and low visibility. And from Mumbai, moving on to Indian northeastern state of Assam, where the flood situation has remained critical, affecting at least 2.5 million people across 29 districts. The death toll has reached 66 as of now, with recent reports of 8 fatalities. Major rivers like Brahmaputra and Barak are flowing above danger levels, prompting high alert in affected areas. In Kaziranga National Park, floods have claimed 114 wild animals, while 95 have been rescued so far. Flooding has affected 68 out of 233 anti-poaching camps as well, with 4 camps evacuated by forest guards. Relief and rescue operations are on war footing in these affected areas. Let's quickly go to Subina as we stay with these visuals. She's joining us live from Dibrugarh. Subina, bring us up to speed with the latest situation on ground, especially those districts which have been battered by heavy downpour, and the arrangements that are put in place by the disaster management apparatus of the region.
Yeah, the flood situation here still remains critical, as over 22 lakh people are affected, Sakal. And the weather, as per the weather conditions, right now it's sunny out here, but the IMD has predicted heavy to heavy rainfall at isolated places of Assam and Meghalaya and also the other northeastern states as well. Now, coming to the next question about the preparations that have been had. Sakal, this time the NDRF, the SDRF, all along with Indian Army and Indian Air Force as well are working day and night on war footing basis to, take out people from the flood affected areas to safe areas and the relief camps. Just a few days ago, the Indian Air Force had rescued 13 marooned fishermen from a sandbar in Brahmaputra. The CM has also been visiting the affected districts of various places. Like recently, he visited Dibrugarh. He also visited in Dibrugarh district, Kwang and Tengaghat area, where the Buriding, which is a tributary of Brahmaputra, had embankment breaches at 4 points. So had visited the area and ensured that proper flood relief assistance would be provided and the embankments would be strengthened. He had also visited Dibrugarh, talking about, and he has ensured that the drainage system would be taken care of and the strengthening of drainage system would happen. Sakal. And also talking about the relief camps, Sakal. Yesterday, 30 relief camps were established. And talking about 269 relief camps, relief distribution centers where food items, etc., medical relief is provided is 361. Now, talking about the medical teams, yesterday, Sakal, more than 200 medical teams were set up, boats deployed, where 171, where 70 people were rescued by boats, evacuated by boats, and even animals, about over 400 animals were evacuated, Sakal. And a few days back, an 18-month rhino was rescued from a flood-affected area. So rescue operations are on not just for humans, but also for animals who are stranded in maroon water, in flood-affected waters. Sakal.
In Kaziranga National Park, what is the latest you're picking up?
Yeah, Sakal, around 141 animals were rescued recently, and the NDRF and SDRF and the forest officials also are working on war footing, and even the common people out there, the people staying nearby, because yes, Sakal. So the people nearby also are helping, to take these animals out to safer places and provide them, whoever is injured, providing them with medical facilities, Sakal.
Okay. Thank you very much for bringing us that extensive report from Floodhit Assam, joining us from Dibrugarh, DD India's Rubina. And still to come on DD India News Hour, this is what coming up next. On the other side, we talk about how Euro 2024 awaits heavyweight semi-final Chelsea as France takes on Spain and England faces Netherlands. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt. Let's move on to some more news and updates. India's President Draupadi Murmu visited the historical Udaygiri caves in the East Indian state of Odisha on Monday. Udaygiri caves are famous for the Hathigumpa inscription, which is carved out in Brahmi script. President Murmu also interacted with students of Bibhuti Kanungo College of Art and Crafts and Utkal University of Culture. Earlier, the president spent some time at the sea beach of Puri, describing it as a spiritual experience. President Murmu is on a 4-day visit to the East Indian state of Odisha. And now let's take a look at other stories making news. Chief Minister of the Central Indian state of Jharkhand, Hemant Soren, wins the floor test in the State Assembly, securing 45 votes out of 76 members' strength. During a special session of the State Assembly on Monday, Hemant Soren took oath as Chief Minister on July 4th. In a big setback to the West Bengal government, the Supreme Court of India dismissed the pleas of Kolkata High Court against CBI. Apex Court also rebuked the government for postponing the case. You're watching DD India News Hour. It's time now for sport. And up first, some news coming in for cricket. From cricket rather. Board of Control for Cricket in India, Secretary Jay Shah on Sunday confirmed that Rohit Sharma will be leading India in the ICC Champions Trophy and the World Test Championship final, both slated to take place in 2025. Shah's comments came exactly a week after Rohit led the men in blue to a very historic title win in the T20 World Cup final against South Africa in Barbados. The BCCI Secretary remains confident that India will record a title-winning streak under Rohit, with the Champions Trophy and the WTC final coming up. From 24 teams at the start to just 4, the UEFA Euro 2024 semi-finalists are now confirmed. Germany, Portugal, Switzerland and Turkey all lost at the quarter-final stage as Spain set up a mouth-watering clash with France and England squeezed through to face the Netherlands in the semi-finals. Spain knocked out host Germany as a 119th minute winner from Mikel Merino sealed a 2-1 win during extra time. France got past Portugal on penalties in another quarter-final following a goalless draw. England also needed a penalty shootout to get past Switzerland. The semi-finals will be played on Tuesday and Wednesday night local time before Sunday's final in Berlin. Wimbledon update. Defending champion Carlos Alcaraz and world number 1 Jannik Sinner stayed on track for a blockbuster Wimbledon showdown by reaching the quarter-finals on Sunday. French Open champion Alcaraz, who is looking to defend his Wimbledon trophy, battled past Ugo Humbert 6-3, 6-4, 1-6, 7-5 in round 4. Alcaraz will now take on Tommy Paul in a quarter-finals match on Tuesday. Meanwhile, Italy's Sinner, who could face Alcaraz in the semis in a rematch of their Roland Garros meeting, was equally impressed in his 6-2, 6-4, 7-6 win over 14th seed Ben Shelton. The 22-year-old will now next meet 5th seed Daniil Medvedev on Tuesday. The two last met each other in January when Sinner beat Medvedev to win his maiden Grand Slam title at the Australian Open. Hollywood star Alec Baldwin is set to appear in court this week over the fatal shooting of cinematographer Helena Hutchins on the set of the Western movie Rust in 2021. The film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, was convicted of involuntary manslaughter in April, the same charge that Alec Baldwin also faces. Jagruti Dave has details.
The trial comes almost 3 years after Hutchins' death and after Baldwin's legal team tried and failed to get the case thrown out. Among their arguments is that the FBI damaged the gun that fired the shot at Hutchins when they were examining it. Now, Alec Baldwin was both the lead actor and the co-producer of the film, and he says he didn't know that the gun was loaded with live ammunition when he pointed it at Hutchins during rehearsals. He also argues that the gun misfired because he only pulled back the hammer and not the trigger, but prosecutors say that evidence indicates that he must have pulled the trigger. The defence is expected to argue that it was not the actor's job to check that the gun didn't contain live rounds and that it was safe to use. If convicted, Baldwin could be looking at 18 months in prison. Jagruti Dave in Washington, reporting for DD India.
That's all in this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. This app is available both on Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on your screen to download it now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and from all of us here in New Delhi, Thanks for watching DD India.